Guten Tag, Hallo, Servus, Grüß Gott, Vier Gott, depending on where you live. These are just one of the many ways, Germans greet. And the beautiful thing about where I live in Bayern, and there are so many ways you can actually, say hello to someone, good morning, good afternoon. And the one I typically like the most is just Servus because it kind of captures, whatever you are trying to say. You see somebody in the morning, Servus. You see somebody in the afternoon, Servus. This is so easy. And if you want to really make it a little bit more formal, especially when the person you are trying to greet is a little bit older than you can then go ahead and say cross cut. But then this is not the focus of this video. The focus of this video today is I am there about 14 years now in Germany. How do I feel? All right. This is not going to be a comprehensive video that's going to capture my feelings because if you come to think of it, 14 years is a long time. Sometimes I kind of, forget, while putting it in perspective, you tend to forget how long 14 years is because time typically tends to fly very, very fast. And if you are not careful, you might lose perspective of how long or how far 14 years could really be. Sometimes I look at my son. My son is just 11 years old. When I look at him, he's already so big that I'm kind of wondering, is this not the same guy that was just born a few years ago? But then this is what it is. 14 years is a long time. And in this video, I'm just going to try to capture a few things. How do I really feel? What has changed? It's not going to be a complete list. Like I said, as a matter of fact, I'm just going to make a playlist so that whenever I have a new feeling, I'm just going to make a new video to include it to it. So if you want to really know exactly how I feel 14 years after, please do me a favor, go and be subscribed to the channel, turn on your notification bell, then you are informed whenever I post, similar content like this. All right, that being said, the very first thing that has changed in my life since I came here is that I have become a dad. All right, when I came to Germany, I was a single man. I didn't have this perspective I do have now. My life has since changed. I got married and I have kids, which is something huge, something I'm eternally grateful about. Like I said, my son is 11 years old, which is my first son, and my second son is 7 right now, and in a few months he's going to be 8. This is beautiful. This is a big change in my life. Imagine a young man coming all the way from Nigeria, single, no concubines, no previous, kids, coming here really single, and one thing leading to the other, falling in love, getting married and then having kids. That's a huge change. And like I said, I'm eternally grateful to God for this. And this is a very major change. It changed the way I see myself. I see myself now as a dad, understanding that, look, I am responsible for 2 beautiful kids, to show them the way of life, be a very good father figure for them. And this has been a major change. Yes, it has been a very long learning curve because there's just no book that's going to teach you how to be the best dad in the world. You're going to be learning a lot of stuff from trial and errors, making mistakes every day, falling in different difficult situations and trying to get back up from these situations. This is huge. In fact, this has changed the way I see the world, the way I see myself. So many times, I am also surprised at the kind of man I have become because there are so many situations where previously, before being a dad, I would pretty much be scared. I would have thought I won't be able to handle this. How am I going to be able to do this? But ever since being a dad, considering the challenges that goes into being a dad from when the kids are born, learning to walk, learning to talk, going to school, man, that's a journey. That's a journey. Even getting married to a woman, not knowing this person before, then falling in love, trying to understand everything about this woman, that is huge. That's a very major change that has happened in my life. Like I said, I'm grateful about that. And it's still a process that is ongoing and we'll continue to discover, more things as we go along. Talking about the food, have I missed African dishes? Not at all, man. 14 years is a long time. Normally, it's a long time for one to actually forget what kind of food one was used to when one was in Africa. All right. I was used to so many kind of food, starch, pounded yam, These are just some of the local dishes that we have in Nigeria. Egusi soup, plantain, stuffs like that. These are beautiful dishes, spicy dishes, various types of soups, yam, beans. And then talking about the fruits, oranges, mangoes, beautiful fruits we have right there in Africa. But then 14 years living here, especially when you do not have direct access to these things, have I forgotten about the fruits in Africa? Not at all. As a matter of fact, I still do miss African dishes and I still do crave it. If I have the opportunity now to get an African restaurant by me, I will pray more visit it and want to try out these dishes once again. This is one thing I try to do every year, because every year there's always the African Day or the African Fest that we have in different, cities. We have in Munich, we have in Freising, we have all over. I always want to tend to, visit one. Last year I was in Starnberg and I was opportunity to finally eat starch and egusi soup after a very, very long time. And I still kind of love this food. I have not forgotten about them. I still miss them every day. That's not to say that I don't love the food here in Germany. As a matter of fact, quite recently, I fell in love with Schweinehaxel, and this is something I wasn't really into for a very long time. I was more into the Italian dishes, Chinese dishes, but quite recently, I figured out that I think I kind of like to eat meat, and this Schweinehaxel is something that just kind of caught my interest, and I've been eating it. Schweinehaxel with some potato mashed together. We call it Knödel here, but then I have not actually forgotten the African dishes, and there's just something about these dishes that each time I see them, each time I have the opportunity to eat pounded yam, jollof rice like we call it, it is just so beautiful and I miss it. I imagine a day is going to be possible for me to actually be able to just get these items as soon as I want them. The dry fishes right there, man, this is a lot. There are so many nice dishes here in Germany, but if you ask me, I will still take the African dishes any day, anytime. And yes, my wife has really tried. She has tried to learn how to cook some of these Nigerian dishes. But like I said, because it's a little bit difficult to just get the food items, to buy readily whenever you want them, it's always difficult, to prepare these dishes. Sometimes we are fortunate to find some African stuff in the shops. We buy it, but because a lot of people are also trying to buy these dishes, it's always a situation where you try to buy them, you go to the shop, most of the things are not there anymore. Plantain, ripe plantain is one of my best. Ripe plantain and beans. This is a delicacy that even my kids love, because back in the days, I'm talking about 5, 6, 7 years ago, there was an African shop in Freising. This African shop was specially good because they had a way of just getting ripe plantain. We call it dodo in my local language. But then this shop closed down and it has become very difficult to get ripe plantains to buy. But in any case, I'm still looking at how I can actually make it a point of duty to go to the African shops in Munich and just make sure at least once or twice a month I'm able to restock on these African, dishes, stockfish. You know what I mean? If you know, you know. So that's beautiful. Talking about work ethics. My work ethics after 14 years of living in Germany has just become better. See, Germany is one place where if you are opportune to have a job here, there is just no room for laziness. A lot of the employers, they do not tolerate laziness. They do not tolerate you having a job and you come to the job just to loiter. You are not doing your job, walking around, talking around. They are not going to take that. You're going to be punished severely for that. As a matter of fact, if you have a new job, there is always this probationary period. Sometimes it could be 3 months, but the standard probationary period is always 6 months. Within this time, your employer is going to definitely take a look and be sure that you are the person that they really need in this workplace. You have to show yourself to be very responsible. And what does it mean? You have to wake up in the morning. If you have the morning shift, you have to be there at your place of work and you have to be seen doing the work. Nobody's going to tolerate laziness here. And if you want to be honest, you might have heard about the German standard. You see, they have the standard of work that I pretty much have not seen anywhere else. When I was in Nigeria, I pretty much knew how it was. You come to work, the first, 20, 30 minutes, you are just kind of dragging. And then the lady comes that sells food. You chill out and first eat and then decides to, talk about how the day is going to go. Everything was just kind of on a slow motion mode. But when you come here, you have a job here. As soon as you are clocking in, I mean, if the shift begins at 6, you are clocking in at 6, you are already starting your job. And this is exactly what we have been doing for a very long time. And over time, it has just made me basically become a better person. I come into my workplace, I want to finish my work and just go home. There's no time to begin to, lazy around. Of course, give and take. You will definitely share some words with your colleagues. How are you? How are things? But to just sit down and constantly be talking without any breaks or talking without any, end in sight, that's not going to happen. Your employer is definitely going to raise an objection to that. And if you are found wanting, more often than not, you are not going to be considered, for a fixed employment. And because of that, people tend to work very hard here. I mean, if you even take a look at the Germans, when they work, you can pretty much tell that there's no laziness right here. Of course, you're not going to have 100%, everybody working as you should. I'm just saying that the general population here, they have a very, disciplined work ethics. They come to work, they want to do their work. You're not going to find a work environment where all the employees are just given, to be lazy. If you have 10 people working in a unit, of course, you might have 1 or 2 that want to be lazy. But generally, the work ethics, the work culture here is that of discipline. You want to go all in hard on your work. And if you have an 8-hour shift, in between you have 30 minutes of break. And you can tell what that means. This 30 minutes, you just have it to go and chill out, eat your food. But the remaining 7 hours, 30 minutes, you are really going to push yourself. You will have enough work to be engaged for the duration of your shift. And this sometimes could be very, very hard. But overall, if you are able to do this, you just realize naturally that over time, you will just become a stronger person, a more disciplined person, which is something I have noticed with myself. When I came here, I wasn't so into work like I am now. But fast forward, 14 years later, things have pretty much changed. And I'm glad that, yes, the work culture here has made me the person that I am today. Talking about driving long distances, I have become used to driving long distances. When I lived in Nigeria a long time ago, see, the highest place you ever drive to then was just maybe like 2 or 3 kilometers. I was fortunate to live close to my job, and this was really, really easy. When I moved to Germany, I realized that 100 kilometers here is just a child's play. A lot of people do even more than that every day. Currently, I do 110 kilometers every given day, and you just have to become used to it. I have basically become used to it. Long time ago, I used to think, how am I going to live at a place that is 150 kilometers from my workplace? If you are lucky, if you live in the big cities, you might be fortunate to have a job just, close to your house. But because it's so hard to find a house in the big cities, people tend to live off the city, and there are just not so many possibilities for you to have the job you would love to do in the place where you live. So you have to kind of live very far away from your workplace. And this is the situation of so many people right now. Because of that, I have just become used to driving long distances. Right now, if I have to do 200 kilometers a day, I'm very well prepared to do it. It doesn't, I do not feel this tiredness anymore. How am I going to drive 200 kilometers? I'm so tired. I mean, I pretty much just drive every day. I drive to and fro work, which is about 110 kilometers. And if I ever get home and I decide to go, buy something from the supermarket, the closest supermarket to me is about 6 kilometers. So I have to also drive again, 6 kilometers going, buy the things I have to buy, and then start to come back again, which is 12 kilometers. You pretty much just, drive long distances if you are not fortunate to be living in the city or to be living where your workplace is. Of course, there are people that are fortunate. I find out that a lot of the people that work in kindergartens, in the old people's homes, sometimes you are fortunate to live close to your work. But if you have, like an IT job where most of these offices are in the big cities, then you must be prepared, to do the kilometers. And for me, it's now just become pretty much normal. And because of that, I no longer have problems when it comes to distance. Sometimes I want to buy something. I'm checking on these sites like Klarna and Tiger, and I see that the item is about 90 kilometers from me. I just tell myself, look, if I can do 110 kilometers every day, what's 90 kilometers that I have to do just one time? All right. So I just put gas on my car, drive all the way, pick up the item, and I'm back home. So my perspective when it comes to driving long distances have since changed. It has changed for the better, and I feel like this is also good for me because right now, given that I drive every day, my driving naturally has just become better. I do a lot of kilometers in a year, and driving being a conditioned reflex thing, the more you drive, the more you just get better at it. I'm going to be leaving this video here because I still have to pick my son from the school, and we have to make some few shopping. Like I said, this is not a complete list. Definitely going to be making more videos in this series. So please, if you want to see more, I want to encourage you to be subscribed to the channel. Click on the notification bell so that you are informed whenever I add a new video to this playlist. Until I see you again in the next one, have a beautiful afternoon.